Hey guys, in this video tutorial I'll show you how to import a 3D animated model and replace the standard third-person controller prefab's construction worker model. So what we'll be doing in this video really breaks down to about 3 or 4 steps. 1. Getting the animated model in and adding its animations. 2. Replacing the contents of the third-person controller prefab with your one. And 3. Tweaking the third-person controller variables to suit your model, because it won't be moving the same speed as your model animates and all that sort of stuff. And the 4th optional thing would be to replace the camera control script with one of your own, because you can make the camera move however you want. You can constrain it to be always from the side, or you can make it rotate around the character, or do a whole bunch of interesting things other than just follow behind the character like the third-person camera for the prefab does. So the first thing we'll do is get the model in, as I said. So we want to import the model to begin with. So what we'll do is we'll use a model that one of my friends helped me out with earlier on. So this one here, we'll use Politician Moves. We'll bring that through, click and drag into Unity into the Project tab, and let go. Now what we need to do is select it in the Project tab and manually add a few animations for it. What I'll do now is I'll quickly also import the third-person controller. So we need to go Assets, Import Package, and then Character Controller, and then click Import. Wait for it to compile a few things, and then we can look under our Standard Assets folder and we'll see the Character Controllers folder added. And we can click and drag the third-person controller into our scene, or simply into our hierarchy, which I'll do now, which places it at the origin 0, 0, 0. And what you'll see is it needs a few animations defined for it. Ignore the ones up here. There's a few empty animations followed by the ones that are needed. So what I'll look at instead to show you is the third-person controller script attached to this game object. So there's 4 different animations you need: an idle animation, a walk animation, a run animation, and a jump pose animation that should only be 2 or 3 frames long. It's a very short animation. Should be very quick and snappy. So what we need then for our imported model is at least 4 animations to make sure that this third-person controller script does work. So lucky for me, my friend has already made several animations for this model, and I also know the different keyframes that I need for it. So I'll just add in the 4 animations. There we go. And I will enter the keyframes just now. So the idle animation is 0 to 15, and then for the walking animation it goes from 33 to 63, and for the running animation he actually didn't define one, so what I'll do is I'll use the walking animation, but I will make it move faster when this character is animating. So it will look kind of like they're just walking very, very, very fast. And for the jump pose, it goes from frame 102 to frame 103. And I want to be careful with this as well, because the wrap mode is important for how these animations play. The jump mode, the jump pose, you're pretty much okay to leave as is if it's a very short animation. But the idle, walking, and running animations you want to loop once they play. You don't want them to just play once and then stop, and then your character just glides along in a static position. So we'll set them to loop as well, so they animate nice and smoothly. And now that we've added our 4 animations, we can click apply and then click and drag our politician into the scene. Now, one thing that I forgot as well is when my friend modeled this, he wasn't too aware of the size that he made it, so it's literally about 10 times too big. So I'm just going to change this scale factor for the imported model, add a 0 there to make it 10 times smaller, and click apply, and then that'll automatically apply to all instances of this mesh in the scene, and it'll automatically scale all of them down. And the next thing I'll do is I'll make sure both of these are in exactly the same position, because I'll be literally copying and pasting the contents of one into the other to replace the prefab's contents. So what I'll do now is I will select all of the contents of the third person controller prefab, holding down Control to select them both, and then hit delete. Losing prefab connection is okay, so we click continue. So all we're left with is this empty game object called third person controller that already has our various components attached. Now what we need to do is take the contents. It's very important you take the contents of your animated model rather than the top level game object, because that won't have the right attributes to work. You want to take all of the contents of it and click and drag them into third person controller, and just click continue 3 times, once for each of the things that we're taking in. We can feel free to delete this other thing that we took them out of now. So what we've got now is a mesh sitting inside the third person controller, but importantly we actually haven't said what animations this third person controller should be using now. It's still thinking that we want to use the old plumber's animations, so we need to update that. So what we should do is make sure we know the names of each of our animations. Now, as I said before in the previous video for animating a tree, it's a good idea to give names to each of your animations that you can recognize at a glance as belonging to that object, because when I show you this, if I try to pick another animation for the idle animation, we'll have 2 idle animations, one for the plumber and one for the politician. And I mean, one way you can tell between them, I guess, would be to click on them and read the file path down here, but that's a bit of a hassle. That's one step too many. So what I like to do is I like to make sure that the names I've given all of these animations start with something to do with the model they're applying to. So this one would be politician, and I'll just add politician to the start of each of these names. So that way when I apply it, I will be able to find these animation names very easily in that potentially very long list of animations, and click apply to change all the names. Now when I go back to the third person controller and select the animations through the script, I can now see politicians are all grouped together because it's alphabetical. So I'll double click that to select it, and then go to the walk animation and double click that, and go to the run animation and double click that, and go to the jump pose animation and double click that as well. So now we've got our 4 animations assigned. One last thing to fix up before we're ready to go almost is the animation component. This still has references to the old construction plumber, so what we'll do is we'll manually assign some animations. So first thing you'll notice is there's a bunch of empty ones and some ones that we don't need as well. So what we'll do is we'll resize the size of this list by clicking on this number here, this 8, and changing that to a 4 so there's only 4 things in the list, and hit enter. Now you'll see it'll automatically change to a 5 because run is set as the animation for the character, so that's okay, that's meant to happen. It's a way of the game of Unity stopping you from removing any last animation from this character. It needs something to play when it starts, basically. So what we'll do is now we'll add each of our 4 animations to this. Don't have to, we can, you know, maybe just add one of them, but actually no, I think it is needed for this script to work, so yes, add all of them. And then make sure that that size of the animations is 4. First of all, making sure to get rid of that run in the animation option. We'll just replace that with idle, so when it starts playing, the politician's standing there waving her arms or whatever she does when she's standing still. So we've got 4 animations. We've got this default one as idle, which is good. We've got our 4 animations also assigned here, and that's really all we need to make this prefab work for a different mesh. So what we'll do now when we play is we'll quickly first of all add a plane so that the politician has something to walk on so she doesn't fall down into infinity. Set that at 0, 0, 0, and we'll scale it up by 10 so there's plenty of area to walk around. And the next important thing to do is to add a directional light, so that way the scene gets lit up in a sensible, rational way without flat lighting applying to everything. Now I'll click play, and you'll see the character walking around. Whoops. Looks like yes, I see what the problem was there. If we click on the character controller, we'll see a green capsule outline appear down here. And if we look closely, that capsule outline is actually poking through this plane that we've made. So the game engine doesn't think that that's colliding to begin with. It only thinks 2 things are colliding if they're not intersecting to begin with. So we move this up clear above the plane, and the politician will now fall down and land on the plane, and the thing that will determine where she can move is actually this pill shape here. So as you can see, she's actually poking outside of it at the moment, and the way you can fix that is tweaking a few values. So we're up to the step I said where you want to resize things and change the speed that the politician moves and everything. So what we'll do quickly is get a side view. We'll go up to this little gizmo up here and click say the Z here, or even the X, and it'll go into a side view, isometric, and we can scroll forward on the mouse to zoom in and click down the middle mouse button to pan around. So it's not rotating the camera at all, it's just sliding it left and right while keeping this as a side view, just the same as it works in 3ds Max when you pan. And what we'll see here is that the pill doesn't actually tightly fit around the politician's body. So we'll go over to the character controller, we'll move it up a little bit, just manually, just by eye really, you don't need to do anything too accurate, and then get it so it's got her in the center. Then we can tweak the height and the radius of it to fit, and we'll click and drag so it goes down. We'll click and drag radius so it's a little bit tighter, and we'll check from all these other angles as well, like the front and the top, just to make sure it's fitting properly. She's flown off the screen, so I'm going to hit F to zoom back in. That automatically centers on the object you've got selected, and as you can see, a little bit of her is poking outside of it, so I'll just increase the radius a tiny bit. Boom, boom, that's about right. And then we'll view from the top, and it should be fine. Yep, she's totally encased. So to get back to a perspective view, click on the box in between all of these X, Z and Y arrows, the little box up in the top corner, and that'll go back to perspective. Otherwise you'll be stuck in isometric view, and I'll show you what that looks like. Everything seems like it's all the same size, and it just looks a little bit odd to begin with. And then you can fix that by clicking the little box, and it'll change the word in the corner to perspective instead of ISO. So we've got this capsule tightly bound around our mesh, so it accurately emulates where the mesh is, and when I bump into things it'll look like the mesh is bumping into things rather than the capsule. So I'll hit play, and she'll fall down and land on this plane. And now we can walk around using WASD or the arrow keys, use shift to run, and hit spacebar to jump. Now, one thing that can take a little bit of time for this as well is making sure your character doesn't look like they're sliding strangely across the surface. I'll give you an example of what I mean. I'll add a texture to this this plane here so that you're able to tell how her feet are moving relative to the ground. Because having a plain colored surface means that you can't actually see how fast her feet are moving or anything relative to the surface itself. So what I'm going to do is I will make a custom material, and hopefully I've got a texture that I can use with it, otherwise I might need to import some. So I'll click on create and then click material, and a new material will appear, and we can give it a name, just anything, test ground we'll call it. And just to be safe, I will import a package that has some materials. A good one is terrain assets, because that's got a lot of ground materials on it, ground textures as well. And then under standard assets you will see a folder called terrain assets and terrain textures, and you can simply instead of having to click and drag anything, you can actually click on your text on your material that you've made, and then go up to its texture where it says none texture and click select, and then pick a texture out of there. I think a decent one would be grass and rock, since it's got a lot of little variations in color and fine-grained detail. And what I'll do to apply it to this plane is I'll click and drag it from the project into the scene over the plane, and you'll see it's now a large blurry looking thing here. What you can do to fix that is you can go to the material, select it, and then change tiling, increase the number to 10. So that means this texture that we've got here repeats 10 times across that surface in both directions. So that's how it tiles. So that's a little bit better. If we zoom back in, yep, we can see some decent detail on the ground, I think. So now when we hit play, we'll be able to tell how the character is moving across the surface. So first things first, you can kind of tell that the character is gliding a little bit. So what can also help is being able to view this from a different angle. So I think we would do well to replace the standard camera controller on this third-person prefab. Nothing too complex, we're just going to remove one of these components here. So we'll click on the third-person controller, and then right-click on third-person camera, and click Remove Component. So now the camera isn't forced to move around after this character anymore. And what we can do instead is click on Main Camera, and add, using Component, Camera Control, add a mouse orbit script. And if you haven't got that option in your menu yet, you should go to Assets, Import Package, and import scripts, and then it will appear. So what we've done now, we've added the mouse orbit script. We need to define what the target is. So we'll click and drag third person controller over target to make that the thing that the camera will orbit around. And we'll change the distance to something a little bit closer so we can get a good look. We'll make it about 5 meters away. So we'll hit play again, and when it loads we will be able to look around and orbit around the animated mesh, and you can get much more of a sense of whether or not your mesh is actually floating over the surface this way too. So this way you can go down nice and close to the surface, and you'll see there's actually a good distance between her feet and the ground, which we can put down to either modeling errors, or maybe I've made the capsule too tall and it's poking down below where her feet are. So what we can do is hit Control Tab, and that will actually free up the mouse to move around and click on things without changing where the camera is. And we'll select the third person controller and just tweak some of these values that we've got here. Well, first off, we'll check the character controller in the scene view we've got down here. We'll check the character controller. Now that seems to be very closely bound to her feet. So I think that the model itself is a little bit... oh no, the capsule is poking just below where her feet are. So if I change the height of it ever so slightly, maybe make it 1.7 instead, so that's just where her feet are. Maybe it's a little bit lower. I'll try 1.65. Oh, nope. She fell through the map because we moved it down just too far. So I'll hit play to stop it. And we'll change it manually here, 1.65. And click play. So she won't fall through the map, because what I did then is I accidentally made this capsule intersect with the plane, and as I said before, if it's intersecting it'll just fall through, it won't collide. So now it looks like she's still floating up a little bit high, so what I'll do is I'll try to manually move all of these objects inside this third person controller down a little bit. So Control Tab to free up the mouse, and then click and drag her down a tiny bit. Looks like it's not wanting to move where she is, so it seems we might need to try to fix that in the editor itself, and then jump back and forth between the editor and the game over and over again, just to make sure it's all working the way we want it. So I'll click play again after moving her down ever so slightly. And it seems like she's getting pushed back up again. So maybe the best solution here, this is a trial and error process, by the way, so you know. There's usually a few little hackish solutions you need to put into place to make sure everything looks like it's working smoothly. So what we'll do, instead of moving her down, we'll move the collider for the pill up, which should achieve the same effect, really. So we'll move it up a little bit, roughly how far we think her feet are. And that should be about right. Let's see. Okay, her feet are very close to the ground, so if I back out again and move that down a tiny bit, we'll make it say 0.991, maybe 0.92, maybe tiny bit more, 0.93, and let's take a look. It looks like her feet are pretty much sitting on top of that grass now. So that's pretty much exactly what we're wanting. And now we can start tweaking how fast, either how fast her animation plays for her walking, or how quickly she walks, the distance she covers over time. So if we click on the third person controller and go to the third person controller script, you'll see a bunch of options here for walk speed, trot speed, run speed, and then animation speeds as well. So if we want to tweak this animation speed for maybe her walk speed, drop it down to I think about 0.4, and then we'll also get her trot speed and drop that down. So if we make her walk again, she's moving much more slowly. Still a little bit too fast though, so we want to drop that down a bit. Now, by the way, these two variables that I'm changing, I didn't really explain. The walk speed is how fast she moves to begin with, and then after a couple of seconds or so, she will start moving faster and faster up until she gets to trot speed. And that's without holding down shift. So she'll move slowly at first and then get faster and faster until she gets to trot speed, which is her default pace if you're not holding down shift to make her run. And how you control that, I think, is trot after seconds. So that'll determine how long it takes for her to get from walk speed to trot speed. So it seems like she's moving at a reasonable pace now, and you can look at the ground and see that her feet are pretty much lining up with everything, so that's, for this tutorial, that's good enough. I'd spend a little bit longer tweaking that otherwise, but yeah. So the next thing we want to do is make her run seem a little bit more realistic. So what I'll do is I'll tweak her run speed. I'll drop it down a little bit to 4, and I will also make her max run animation speed something ridiculously fast, because her walk animation speed is very slow, and we're using that as our run animation because I'm lazy. So I'll make it about 5 and see how that goes. That's pretty much right on the money. It's surprising right off the bat. Looks a bit funny there. Anyways, so that's how it works, and you can now make her walk and run around and hit spacebar to make her jump, and she'll follow jump pose. And you can tweak all these other little variables and see, just figure out what they do. They're pretty obvious from their name, but you know, they can still be fun to just play around with and see what they do. One last final thing to mention about this as well, and remember this for whenever you're editing things while testing the game in play mode. Any changes that you make to these variable values while you're playing will actually be reverted back to what they were before you played when you stop playing. So you'll see walk speed and trot speed, I've got nice values for those, 0.3 and 0.5 roughly. If I stop, they'll jump back to the old values they had, 3 and 4. So that's a little annoying thing about Unity, and you really just need to memorize what the values are, and then hit stop and assign them, and then go back in and tweak them again, and over and over and over again. It's a little bit frustrating, and I'm hoping they'll fix that in a later version of Unity. Fingers crossed. But yeah, that pretty much sums it up for animating your own character using the 3D character controller in Unity. Yeah, I hope that helped. If you need any more help with that, just let me know.